Okay, before anybody freaks out, I did enjoy the movie a lot, and I'll go over the good points too. And I know these kind of anime-centered videos I've been doing lately have been getting viewers that don't watch my stream, and they don't necessarily get my humor or my passionate rants, but stick around a little longer and you will, eventually. So before we start, this may contain some spoilers for season 2, but if you're all caught up with the anime, you should be good to go. So to give a little bit of background context, I recently started watching Jujutsu Kaisen, and I know I'm very late on the trend, but hey, I was busy and now I am catching up. Unfortunately though, I didn't watch the movie when I was supposed to watch it because apparently you're supposed to watch the first season of JJK first, and then you're supposed to watch the movie, and then you're supposed to watch the second season. But I watched both seasons and then I watched the movie because I didn't get the memo. And back in my boomer days, like the movies, they were never part of the stories. Anime movies back then were always just some kind of filler arc that they made separately, and it wouldn't give a lot of context or, more information on the lore. But I had heard that this movie did, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it. It's gonna be really good. And now that I finished watching both seasons and the movies, I went out and I bought all of the remaining mangas yesterday because everywhere I go, and everywhere I click, there seems to be spoilers, so I want to get ahead of that and probably finish the story. Also, they haven't announced JJK Season 3 yet, and I'm not willing to wait that long. So, plus I usually prefer the mangas anyway, love the art style. I just like reading the mangas all the time. If there's a series I like, I tend to read the mangas and then watch the anime. So another thing I'd like to say is that I really enjoyed Geto's character. I usually start off a series, there's some, characters that I like, but these characters, and then you get introduced to other interesting characters, and then you also end up liking them too. And for me, a really interesting part of season 2 was the first few episodes and the whole arc and the flashback between Geto and Gojo. I thought that story was really interesting. The friendship between them is iconic. Of course, there's a reason why this became such a huge TikTok trend. I think a lot of people could relate to that. People loved, the bromance, the friendship. There were some permanent deaths. It was very emotional. You see Geto change and makes his way towards being the villain that we know later on. You see him, how he changed in his mentality, and how the schism between him and Gojo becomes wider and wider as time passes by. Now, there's one thing that I've noticed that this series tends to do a lot, and it's that it tends to not super flesh out some of the developments or things they do. Like, for example, sometimes they'll show a quick flashback to explain certain events. Like, there's this new character that suddenly knows this new technique, and you're like, wait, did I miss an episode? Because I haven't had that explained to me before. And then they'll show like a quick flashback of somebody explaining to them how to do this technique, and they've mastered it in that moment. So that kind of writing style has its perk, and the perk is that it keeps you in the action and it makes the story very fast-paced. Like, if you think back of the first few episodes of season 1, the action starts right away and it hooks you, and that's good. That's a great thing. But the downside of this technique, and when it's used too much, is that it causes some confusion from time to time, and it causes some segmentation in the pacing. Now, back to the movie, I think because I watched season 2 first, my expectations were maybe too high or something, because I was told it included Geto's death, which is one of the major plot points in season 2, and I was really curious to see how his end would come. I knew that Gojo would kill him because I had seen season 2 and it's mentioned in there, and I wanted them to explain the scar on his forehead, etc, etc. Now, in the movie, he's already full-on villain. He's totally passionate about his cause, and he's all the way there, unshakable in his convictions. And it's kind of sad to see how much that character's changed. Obviously, whenever there's this trope in anime, you kind of wish it didn't happen, question why, but that's part of the general dynamic, I think. Now, as for the movie, the plot is mainly focused on the introduction of this character called Yuta, which I loved. I liked this character. I think his development was great. The story of his curse Rika, I also really enjoyed. And I also really like his fighting style with a katana. I love katanas. think they look really cool. I think it was a very stylistic character too. But I think if the author wanted to introduce or explain Geto's death in the same movie, it could have been like an hour longer or at least 30 minutes longer. So during the showdown between Geto and Yuta, there's this scene where they both power up their strongest attacks. And then it cuts to the next scene and the fight is over. And I was like, wait, that's it? Where's the rest of it, you know? So I felt like Geto's death felt rushed, and honestly it was a bit of a letdown for me to have him be defeated by a student, even though it is Yuta and he's a special grade sorcerer with an immense power and an incredible power. But that student only had a couple months of formal training, and really I think the biggest letdown is that he wasn't defeated by his rival and former best friend Gojo. Because usually in this trope, you know, it builds up the tension and the separation between two characters. And we didn't get to enjoy this denouement, this final climax to that story, to just wrap it all up, which is that there's two rivals and we could have seen them both pushed to the limit in this, you know, final showdown. It's kind of like the Naruto and Sasuke alter ego of the show, or, you know, the Allison and Rhaenyra. There's plenty of examples to go around in popular culture. And I am sure if it did happen, it would have been an incredible fight. Now, that being said, maybe there's a plan to see these two characters fight in the future with Geto's shell, I guess. But who knows? I don't know what the author has in mind. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe they just lacked resources for the movie. Maybe they just ran out of showtime. I have no idea. But I think one way the fight could have played out, there's this one technique that is used a lot in shonen where the author doesn't really want you to know the final power level of a character, so they have the fight interrupted by XYZ event, or maybe the villain has some kind of gotcha card because he came there prepared. So the fight gets interrupted and then another character steps in to finish the fight. And I think that's something that could have happened here. And by doing so, we could have had both, you know, Yuta doing the pact and breaking his curse and all of that. And then we could have had Gojo step in and have like the final rival showdown fight that was so heavily hinted at before. Before people freak out, I'm not saying that Yuta isn't strong enough or he shouldn't have been strong for that part of the movie. He has like this immense raw power and he has this extremely powerful curse, and also he's descended from this like legendary sorcerer. But it really felt like he skipped several levels of progress in that fight as well, and that was also another one of my issues, and not just in terms of raw power, but more so in terms of sorcery mastery, or should I say curse mastery. So there's one thing of having really immense raw power, and it's another thing to understand what you have to do to manipulate all these techniques. And sure, he is the descendant of Sugawara, and maybe he had like this awakening moment in that fight that made him stronger, but not only did he get several levels stronger, he became like 3 chapters ahead stronger. And for example, he like catches on how to use Inumaki's power in a single fight, and he becomes progressively stronger and stronger and stronger until he makes the pact with this curse and unlocks his full potential, eventually breaking the curse itself. And that was great. I loved the pact. I think it was very emotional. I loved the ending of that fight, but I wish it happened later, or there needed, for me at least, to be more progress for that character for him to get there. So for me, it was just a bit too fast, a bit too rushed, and I wish there was like more build up around Yuta spawning over the course of several more fights where he would have been tested. Or even just breaking it down into 2 separate events would have felt more realistic to me. I mean, yeah, it's anime. It doesn't have to be realistic. It just felt like he was buffed too fast, and like we needed a few more patch notes here and there. until he reached his ultimate level. At the end of the day, I guess my whole critique of the movie can be summarized in the fact that I just think they killed off this amazing villain a bit too quickly. And I'm a super villain myself, so of course I love villain characters. But then again, the series has plenty of other great villains to go around. You know, there's Sukuna, so hot, and Mahito, who's also very interesting. And I mean, we're gonna see Geto again as a shell, although it's not exactly the same. So again, I love the movie. I don't regret watching it. I think it was beautifully made. I mean, I'll take anything that I can get from this series because I love everything I've seen so far from Jujutsu Kaisen. Aside from the fight, another part that I also really enjoyed in the movie was Geto's death being finished off by Gojo, realizing this was Gojo's plan all along, Gojo always being 2 steps ahead, and Gojo counting on knowing his old friend's heart, and he knew he wouldn't kill the students, and he didn't kill Maki even though she had no power to see the curses. There's also this one moment where Gojo says something to Geto that we don't hear because the audio is muted. And I think the animation did really great portraying that scene like that. Like, I looked at the manga panel and there's no really indication that he says something, but I felt like this part the movie did it even better almost than the manga because it was very, very emotional. You can kind of guess what he said. It probably something affectionate, something to do with their friendship. Maybe it's the line that he told Yuta later on that he's his one and only best friend. Who knows? I like that they left it up to the air, and I like when movies and TV shows do that in general, and it lives like a sense of mystery and open-endedness. So that was a part that I really liked about the movie. I think it was very well done. So what do you guys think? Do you also wish there was a Geto x Gojo duel to close this out? Overall, my only critique is that I wish this dynamic was more, fleshed out and not just used as a plot point, because otherwise, then what's the point of making Geto the main antagonist if we can just replace him by any generic villain, remove a couple scenes here and there, and it's the same movie. The emotional tension is what makes this situation interesting. So again, it did not ruin my enjoyment of the movie or of the series. Still loved it, and I will continue to enjoy the series after, even though I keep hearing like really doomer things that it's going to get worse. I mean, I'm sure I'll end up liking or finding things to like in whatever comes next. I don't want to believe the dooming stuff too much. I'm huffing the copium, and I just hope that the series will keep on impressing me and inspiring me, because it's been a great ride so far. And the art style is just amazing. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment below, but please keep it civil or the mods will remove your comments until my next terrible anime take. Bye bye, love you all.